Footy Prime, the BroadsCast. We've got Claire Rustad. We don't have Rian Wilkinson, so she's in camp with the Welsh women's national team. They have two important matches coming up on the 26th and the 29th, if I'm not mistaken. So check that out, follow them, support them. But we have a real treat for you today because we have our ex-teammate, founder of the Northern Super League, and also extremely, tremendous resource player and support person for the women's national team currently. They're still workshopping that title. Dinah Matheson.
Yeah, I still don't understand titles. It needs some work, perhaps.
Resource for the players or a resource player? Like,
no, team support staff is what I think we.
See, I don't have that written down. That would have been helpful to me as the host. But listen, we were talking about this kind of coming in before I pressed the record button. And you said you were sore. This is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. So like the rhythms of camp, being in there, like the routine of it all, but then also playing. So did you bring your boots? Were you provided with boots? And how much have you been playing?
I did bring my boots. I feel like these are like a 2018 vintage. They're an old pair of Adidas boots that were like actually leather, and I could only ever fit into the women's. And this was one of the rare ones back in those days that wasn't pink or purple. So I always held on to these. Fits like a glove. So I brought them.
But then how's the body feeling?
Yeah.
It's not a long camp. There's 3 days of training total. And as you know, there's often boys in camp with us. And on day 2, which was yesterday, unfortunately, the boys did not show. So I did get thrown into two 4-minute blocks of the 11v11. And that made me pretty sore. And I hopped in the goalkeeper warm up and I did a lot of shooting, which was definitely a mistake.
Okay. Not between the sticks, because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But just as a shooter, that does. Because I wanted to also say, when I was prepping for this, I don't really need to prep for finding out about my friend, Dinah Matheson, but just for your particular role. This is a CBC article. It described you as the 40-year-old Matheson, a cerebral attacker, won 206 caps for Canada before retiring and leading the charge for a domestic professional women's league. So all true, but cerebral attacker, is that how you would? Cerebral, yes. Attacker, is that how we're going to describe Didi?
I did have to look that one up, and that, of course, was Neil Davidson, longtime supporter of Canadian soccer and Canadian women's soccer. I think maybe he's just had to describe me too many times, and he's run out of adjectives, and maybe he has a challenge where he has to use a new one each time. I don't mind it. I mind it more when it's just like it's a synonym for short, like it's diminutive or something. Not a fan of those. So why not? My dad texted me the same thing. He's like, cerebral? Question mark?
Oh, he questioned cerebral more than he questioned attacker? Because I was fine with cerebral.
He might have put both, yeah. But he had the same question as you.
Okay, because as it pertains to this role, and I want to dig into it a little bit more, you've referred to it as a one-off, because obviously you have a lot to tend to as creator, founder of the Northern Super League, and that now you've transitioned to Chief Growth Officer, which Rian and I had we took a lot of issue with. 5 feet.
Title. Yeah.
I love it. You own it. But do you think this is making you more attractive to other nations? Has Spain tried to poach you while you've been over there? Do you think you're going to be fielding calls from Emma Hayes and U.S. women's national team to be like, we need her services?
Probably. Not yet. I haven't got anything yet. But probably after the game tomorrow.
Claire and I can be your agents if you want.
Support staff. Yeah.
Don't know if I need another job right now.
Yeah, that's right. You don't need that on your plate, Claire.
No. I can provide kind of like, snarky input on Dee's mirrored background, but in her hotel room, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm agent quality material.
But what's the feel, Dee, being in camp? Like, first of all, like as a former player, do you miss those rhythms of camp? Maybe as the first question.
Good question. It's been both. On the one hand, great to see everyone in the group. Obviously, I know most of them. There's the odd player I didn't know, or some of the staff I hadn't met, but obviously know most of the people here. So it was great just to see everyone, including our good friend Melissa Tancredi. lovely to see her. And just to live on this side of it. Like we've obviously had friends transition into coaching or support staff, medical staff. So they've lived in the black hoodie for a while now. So to see how that functions behind the scenes has been really interesting. I've been more part of the technical staff, so the coaching staff in those meetings. So just to see how their rhythms work. I think, we all know that being on the staff is much more tiring and more work than being a player. Everyone puts in kind of 12 to 16-hour days, even in a short camp. And then it's also been like a little bit weird too, because it's, I think I've described it to a few people. Let's say you do a job that you're pretty good at for like 18 years, and then you take 5 years off, and then you go back to that same environment, but you do like a different job that you haven't really done before. And so it's just kind of like a little bit surreal in that way too. But it was, I know the environment, like you guys know the environment, so it's easy to try and step in and grab a hand, or like you kind of have a sense when it's time to help pick up balls or give someone a shout of encouragement or take some extra corners. So Vanessa and Shalina can do some headers at the end of practice, even though your quads are telling you shouldn't do that.
And is it a strange thing being in the meal room? So as a former player and then working there to be direct support for the players, and like you kind of being their touchstone to that past generation, I'm sure tons of them idolizing you. And then obviously with NSL, getting in front of them every 4 or 5 months to let them know and keep them up to speed on what's happening with the league. Is there that moment of hesitation, whether you join the players table or you join the staff table, or is it pretty fluid and doesn't really matter where you sit?
I've been sitting at the staff table. But I feel like that's because I know the players more than I know the staff. So I feel like I needed to get to know them better. But yeah, I've been going staff table.
You don't just eat on the floor between the two tables.
Yeah, I didn't. I sit by myself in the lobby. I couldn't pick.
So is there anything in particular that you're addressing? Because like the elephant in the room is this independent external investigation into the drone scandal at the Olympics. These players, I imagine, still bearing the scars of that, but I think it's important that there's continuity, that they're not held hostage by this investigation. So is that something that you're actively talking about? Like, I'm sure that there's no atmosphere as it were, but there's also Caitlin Collar, who's in as part of the technical staff, who's the Whitecap girls elite coach, who's over with you, but the players know the other members of the technical staff. So like, what's the vibe like, and what's the kind of buzz in the camp right now as they get ready to face the World Cup champs?
Yeah, I'm not really playing the role too much of, getting asked the question, what's going on, and filling them in. And that's because Canada Soccer and Kevin gave the players and the staff both as many updates as he could provide, not on the investigation because it's not done yet, but just the overall process and what's next. So I think they're pretty up to date on that picture. And I think, I guess, yeah, it's a unique camp, obviously. Hopefully it's kind of a one-off in terms of where we're at, and hopefully things get resolved pretty quickly on the investigation side coming out of this. So then there's just a direction moving forward, a clear direction moving forward. So I think everyone gets that. I think the players get that, and everyone snaps into camp mode pretty quickly.
Right.
Like they know the routines, they know the flows. It's you're living in camp and you're with your people, and like these folks have all spent a lot of time together, obviously. And this Olympics was obviously a particularly tough one, but that means all their bonds are that much closer for it. So I'd see that there hasn't been that much chat about it. I think they are happy they got an update of what's going on. So there's less question marks, which was obviously important. And then other than that, it's kind of just down to business and doing the recovery and eating the right food and having the meetings and going to practice and rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm not really surprised by that. I mean, I think about our experiences with camp and Dee, like what you said about how people just sort of snap back into camp mode. And that's that's such an accurate representation of it. You just sort of get there and you do the things. And I think that based on their performance at the Olympics, I'm not really surprised that they've been able to kind of snap back into that mode. I mean, that's part of being a professional. And I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm just glad to hear it. I guess my question is less about how the players are coping, because I think they've shown us that they can cope very well with that type of situation. But like, and you may not even really be able to answer this, but like, what's the vibe amongst the coaching staff? Like what is the approach from the coaching staff's perspective to a camp like this?
I staff kind of same answer. And this is my first time living it, obviously, but there's so many staff now. There's so many more staff than when we used to play. I think there's one more staff member than there are players. So it is a robust team. And most
is a tremendous ratio.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
what do they have that we didn't have?
Everything, Claire.
Every position,
Everything.
Yeah. So I think same on their side. Like, it's a crew that's been through a lot together. It's pretty tight. They know their routines and like high performance behaviors, and they've got everything down to a T. It's a very well-oiled machine that ticks behind the scenes for this national team. So I would say same. Like, the biggest structural change obviously was within the coaching staff with the tweak and structure there. But I think kind of aside from that, it's still more or less operating the same with, I don't know, Katie's been great. Like, she's got good coaching experience. So I think has stepped in really, really well. I've probably been the most awkward one because I keep being like, I'm not a coach, guys. What can I do to help? So I probably feel the most awkward, but I think everyone else is similar to the players where, you snap into camp mode and you just do camp things, and you only have, 4 days, 3 on-field sessions to prepare for the world champions. So I think it was pretty easy for everyone to focus in and get to work pretty quick.
And what's it been like, Dee? Like, this team has the benefit of moving through and navigating that really difficult Olympic experience, and how, like, the resiliency that they showed, that they can kind of add that to their locker now as they build. And I think when you look at this roster, I think a couple people early on were like, well, the U20 team just did really, really well. It would have been nice to see some new faces. You maybe get a chance to blood some new players, but you don't have the benefit of that because the program's in flux. There's no clear leadership. But like, what's been your takeaway and seeing some of these younger players maybe that you weren't as familiar with, and getting to see them up close, and then getting to see how that established leadership within the team is kind of shepherding them along?
Yeah, it's, I think the biggest change is just how much, and this isn't, I don't think, specifically answering your question, sorry, but this is what came to mind.
So difficult as a guest. Terrible.
Just how much the game has improved, and just how well everyone moves the ball and has understanding of the game. I think our program has had that for a long time, but just on the technical side and the way the ball moves, I feel like is far ahead from where I retired, let alone kind of the 5 years before I retired. And obviously because the game gets better and better in general, but there's just so many more players playing in top professional environments everywhere around the world. This is now their daily environment, which, 10 years ago was not the case. So just the overall shift in level of play. And like you said, some of the younger players I didn't know, or players that have come in that have only been in a few camps, it's the same because they're playing in really solid environments. So yeah, it's fun to watch.
What if you talk about a player like we were all 3 of us midfielders? It's a good thing Rian's not here. Get out of here, former defender and attacker.
We were all cerebral attackers, I think, is what you're looking
That's right.
Yes.
It's fucking going on my bio. But like, you look at a player like Sime Vranje. So really dynamic, really physical, but she has all the technical tools to be a player at that next level. And she's made the leap just recently to Manchester United. So to get to see her up close is kind of an emerging talent with this group. What strikes you about her game?
Good question. I think probably same things you can see from afar. She's very good on the ball. She's got a physicality on the field, and she can cover a ton of ground. So she's got a really good mix there, where I feel like in midfielders in the past, we sort of kind of had one or the other. You had a bruiser, or you had a technician. And
I was
now
both.
you were both. You were both.
No, just the former, not the latter.
And Simi can be both.
That's right.
And she can both hold the center of the midfield and kind of be in that holding position. Where you typically would have found Desiree Scott in the past, but also she can join the attack really well, and she can combine up front, and she's a threat when she's in and around the box too. The midfield's got some solid depth at the moment.
Claire, were you wanting to jump in there before when I asked that question?
No, I took issue with the bruiser and the technician comment, because Dean and I played together, and
it was an exaggeration to make my point. That's all.
No, it was a point well made and well taken. And also you credit to you, because you started maybe a little bit hesitantly with that answer. And like, of course you're a member of the technical staff. Like that was like a scouting report on Sime Vranje. That was tremendous, Diana Matheson. Yeah. But you mentioned Desi Scott there. So you I think it was when you were first announced as a member of the staff, on that press call, you were talking in glowing terms about Desiree Scott, which I think everybody who's ever come across her in her career speaks the same way about her, like just lovely things to say. So do you notice a Desiree Scott sized hole in this team? Like I know they went through the Olympics without Desi. Desi was an alternate, right? Named late.
He was in Paris, yeah.
Right. So they had the benefit of a Desi Scott there to help with everything that was happening off the pitch. So in order to fill that role, I mean, I think she's a unique person where she was so dominant on the pitch, but then lent so much off of it. So do you think, is that more of a by committee kind of work that has to take place in that leadership group, or is that maybe another person who kind of takes the reins in that regard?
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of a mix. Like I feel like when you have a big personality or an incredible player, I mean, same with Sink, that conversation. How do you replace Sink in that leadership role? I think with this group, there's always been kind of one or two or three or four people, kind of doesn't matter, that are ready to fill part of what a Desiree Scott did. Like I think a Kaylin Sheridan, Sabrina D'Angelo, like those are two folks that come to mind that can kind of give, kind of hit that emotional support side as well. And there's probably a few others that live that role too. This wasn't a long camp. I've only been here 3 days. So I feel like naturally a few people kind of fill the role until it all kind of gets filled, but it almost takes a new shape too. I heard this, it's not a metaphor, maybe it's a scientific fact, or maybe it's a mix of both.
Or a simile.
I think when you overfish a population and other kind of fish come in, you can, even if you overfish that new kind of fish, you can never get the old kind of fish in again, because the ecosystem has changed. So I think once you don't have a Desiree Scott anymore, other things take over and fill the space in different ways, and it just becomes different, but people are filling it in their own way. You never get another carbon copy of a Desiree Scott or a Christine Sinclair, but there's more room then for more people to grow into other areas.
I love that school of thought.
Hey.
But seriously, like you were talking before, and I don't want to go like ad nauseum on the drone thing, but the feeling of trust between the players and the staff has got to be kind of a unique balance and a unique feeling. But you mentioned Kevin Blue, and he was on Footy Prime last week, and he vowed to be transparent, to be highly communicative. He's done that. And for him to show up and to be in Spain for 24 hours, I think he's done a lot in terms of to build that relationship between the players, both programs, the men's program and the women's program, with the leadership at Canada Soccer. So maybe in talking about who's going to fill the void for like the Desi Scotts, a player like Janine Becky, Quinn, I mean, it used to be Sophie, used to be Desi, or Sink, like who's moving in there, and like, what are you feeling with, and like, what's the difference between like when we were playing. And like, I mean, I know you kind of straddled a couple of generations there when me and Claire are concerned, and like you played with some of the current players, but it's in stark contrast to how it used to be. Is it not? So like, is that refreshing for you to see? And is it like a palpable thing in camp that trust is being kind of built?
Like the trust between players and Canada Soccer, you mean?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I mean, players are always like, we're always a few steps removed, aren't we? I feel like our ideal place as athletes and players is to live high performance and play our sport and be really good at that and not really have to worry about other things. I think the players of the women's national team have always had to worry about other things because we had to sort of fight and build and push and cajole Canada Soccer to support our program at an adequate level and to compensate the players at an adequate level. So there's always been those battles and conversations going on. And it's, yeah, I think Kevin, I mean, I've said this before, I think Kevin is the absolute right leader that Canada Soccer needed at this point in time. They've had some great general secretaries in the past that put Canada Soccer on the map, especially through bringing fantastic events to Canada. I mean, the Men's World Cup next year is coming to Canada Soccer because of past leadership there. I think what Kevin is going to bring now is now a new modern Canada Soccer. I think he's going to update some things on the business side and get the place a little more streamlined for kind of where the sport's at now. I think Kevin is, from what I've seen, it's exactly what he said to you. He's going to do his best to be transparent and make the place better and grow not just Canada Soccer, but both its national teams. Yeah, I really like the guy. I think it's the right guy for the job. He's a really smart guy. He's new to soccer, so I think he's going to keep asking a ton of questions and getting feedback as much as he can get it. And the more feedback he gets from the players and staff here, the smarter he's going to get. And we had a Halloween party last night that he didn't know about, and
I'm so glad you brought that up.
And he found a costume, so I feel like that's a good sign.
Okay, what did he go as?
What was the costume?
I believe he had the killer from Scream.
Oh, so he picked up a mask. Was he wearing?
Right. Better fact check that.
Was he wearing a vest? I need to know.
The sun is
under the Scream outfit. Not sure.
No, like in general, when he spoke to you guys, when you saw Kevin Blue,
like he probably packed a vest. Yeah.
I need to know with 100% certainty. I feel like it's his uniform. When he was on, I was disappointed. He was actually, I wasn't disappointed because he was wearing a Kansas City Current Nichelle Prince jersey. I thought it was a Desi spot. Nice. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a lovely touch. But then I said, Kevin, thrilled to see you wearing that, repping our women's national team and their clubs. But I'm kind of disappointed. And I also lost a $5 bet because you showed up and you're not wearing a vest. And then he put it on. It was next to him. So anyway, I love that. Moving to the pitch, and we won't get too deep into this matchup because we want this to be kind of evergreen and Canada play Spain on Friday. But Claire, what does Canada need to do? Like, won't focus on Spain too much. I do believe they're without Aitana Bonmati. But what does Canada need to do in order to have a strong performance against the world champs?
Yeah, so Spain was interesting at the Olympics, to say the least. They had quite the catastrophic collapse against Brazil in the semifinal. It was funny. I really fought hard for us to do the semifinals and the finals after Canada got knocked out. And in some way, there's a bit of kind of a bit more freedom with that. And I was like, oh, great, I'll get to rip the Americans for a game. And the American game ended up being kind of a snore in the semifinal. And I spent 90 minutes just ripping Spain, like the Spanish defense, to shreds. And yeah, so like, I mean, I think there's a lot to take advantage of. And I think for the Canadians where they're really trying to push to kind of find a new attacking identity and really kind of make a consistent mark there, I think it could be a really good opportunity because Spain was just a
disaster defensively. Like they were a sieve and disorganized and seemingly uninterested. So a good opportunity to make a really big impact internationally against the world champions. So I think just I would stomp their foot down on the gas, and I'd love to see some of the younger players get a shot. I'd love to see Olivia Smith play. Dee's keeping a really good poker face right now. I love it. I would really, I'd really love to see some of the younger players get in there, and I think I just think it's a really good opportunity. This is kind of that weird window for the women's national team after the Olympics, where there's sort of this lull, and it's like, okay, well, what are you preparing for? Are you preparing for something? Are you preparing for the future? Like what's kind of the theme of the camp or the theme of the time? And I mean, I think they're constantly always trying to build, which is great. So I think it's a good opportunity to see some of the younger players play. And I just think that, like, I think the attitude, and I think the attitude probably will be just go at them right off the bat. Right. I mean, I think defensively, the Canadians have been proving time and time again that they can be very, very strong and organized. And I just think that now is the time to just try to really push offensively.
And you also get the late addition of Mimi Alidou, who's in for Chloe Lacasse, who's absolutely lighting it up, scored a hat trick for the Utah, what are they called again? The Royals? DD Euro team, who's back in the fold now in NWSL, but gets an injury. So Mimi Alidou gets a look there. So it'd be great to see her get on the pitch. So looking forward to that. So Spain also, but they recovered from that poor performance, Claire, that you alluded to. Did they not? They ended up finishing 4th.
Sorta.
Still decent, I guess, coming off the back of a World Cup win.
An uninspired finish to that tournament for them. And
in Spain's defense, we had to watch. We had to watch. We watched, obviously, some clips from the Spain-Brazil game from the Olympics. And watching those clips, and I said this out loud, literally hurts my brain, because no one on Brazil is where logically you think they should be. So it was probably just, it doesn't click up here all the time. It's very unpredictable.
Excuse? They're like the world champions. You gotta adapt, man. I mean, Brazil did a great job of just being a bit chaotic, but it was that game was just I still can't quite grasp it a little bit. I mean, we all wanted Mar to make the final, right? I mean, like, that's kind of where we all landed there.
That's fair.
But it was a weird one. And you're right, Brazil was pretty chaotic.
So we've added to your title now, Dee. So you're there as support staff, but as Diana Matheson, cerebral attacker, and Spain apologist.
Yeah. Spain's only remaining defense.
Yeah.